I've invited you, Rob, and friend Brian Alder over to look at my kit, which I've set up for my attempt at the Around the World cycling record, which I'm hopefully starting on May 1st. So the passports I have, I'm Canadian originally, hence my accent. So I've got two passports, which is really useful because sometimes you need visas. Guinness requires you to have a journal. And so I've got this journal, which basically I'll have people write down every day where they are. I've put in different languages what I need to get from them. This is a card which says in Kazakh, Uzbek, Uyghur, and Chinese that I'm a vegetarian. Don't give me fish, meat, and chicken, and I'm in a rush. So I know that there'll be many places where I will not be able to use Google Translate or things. So this is a very efficient way of doing it. The other thing I've had is I've made an official pass showing my identity card. And the reason is I will get stopped by the police in outback places and they want to know what you're doing. And so this says that in Kazakh, Uzbek, Uyghur, and Chinese, who I am, and with an official stamp of the Guinness on this. Not that this is, I just made this up myself, but if you stop by the police and want to know what's a European doing riding their bike in the middle of the night in certain areas, may help. So what's also unusual this time is I'm taking stuff I've never taken before bikepacking. This is a bottom bracket. So when I was going across Canada after about 6,000 kilometers, my bottom bracket failed and the bike shop didn't do a very good job reinstalling it. They kinked my Di2 wire, so now I can do it myself. But I actually then made this tool for doing the bottom bracket. It's a cheap piece of aluminium bottom bracket tool from China, but I had the local engineering shop drill it through, and I can insert a through axle in here to get the leverage. So now for 90 grams, I have a complete bottom bracket repair set. This is a replacement bearing set for my DT Swiss hub, which is serviceable. I'm hopefully not going to need that. And so it's saying, given the remoteness of basically the first 12,000 kilometers, 8,500 kilometers to Shanghai, another 3,500 to Brisbane, that's totally remote areas. And this is where getting any form of resupply is going to be difficult. So it's having the right stuff just in case something goes wrong. This is a CB radio. What on earth are you doing with a CB radio? Well, I've got to do about 3,000 kilometers of outback cycling in Australia from Darwin down to Brisbane. And anyone who's cycled in Australia knows that these big trucks are absolutely terrifying. And so the concept behind having a CB is to use channel 11. And when I see a truck coming quickly at nighttime, I can say, hey, by the way, that flashing light in front of you is a cyclist. So it's really been a case of trying to say, what's the right balance of what do I need? And above all, what will keep me safe? Because that's the big challenge here. So I run a Di2 Shimano electric shifters. The reason is that I'm 65 years old, and I find that after about 1,000 kilometers, my hands get just crampy with all of the mechanicals. Problem is, that Di2 failed on me a number of times, so I've got redundancy there in terms of cables. Hey Brian, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
So I've invited my friend Brian Alder over to give me a critique of my gear list for my Around the World attempt. Brian has cycled in Kyrgyzstan and remote areas before, and he's also the founder of the Tewa Panamu race, so a lot of experience. And really it's just a case of a fresh pair of eyes to say, yeah, you don't need this, or have you thought about this, and whatever possessed you to think you need this. As it stands, it's working out about 6.8 kilos of all the gear, but I'd hoping to get it down to about 6, but I really don't know that I can get it anywhere near that low. The top 2 rows here is basically what I'll be wearing every day. So I've got my helmet, of course, good POC helmet, crashed last year with one. This is my helmet I crashed last year, broke my collarbone, smashed helmet, didn't even have a headache. So big believer in POC helmets. I've got some shoes, which are walkable shoes, no carbon soles, because 29,000 kilometers, I've got a lot of walking to do. then the socks and a visibility vest and a heart rate monitor and my allergy bracelet. For wearing the clothes, it's basically a buff, which are the most versatile things I find for cycling. You can cover your face and your ears and your head, some gloves, shorts, undershirt, and a shirt. And that's basically my wearing kit for every day. To the right of it, I have a light rain jacket and then a vest and some light rain gloves. And so that's essentially will cover me, because the temperature will range from near zero in parts of Kazakhstan and China to 40 degrees when I'm going through the US and Europe in summer, and Spain in summer. Below that, I've got some rain pants and a rain jacket and rain boots. And the reason I like the rain boots, paradoxically, is last year when I was racing in France in the rain, there were guys in front of me with these things on, and they were so visible with their moving legs and the bright fluorescent covers that I thought it was a really great safety enhancement. This down bit over here is a bit unusual for some people, but I have a Montbell down jacket and down pants and some little booties. And the reason is that if it's not too cold, I'll just basically chuck those on and lie down on a bench and just have a sleep at night or a quick bivvy without having to get the full kit stuff out. And then I have a good down sleeping bag. And then my off-bike kit consists of, I've got a pair of long trousers I can also cycle in. So when it gets cold, I'll pull those on over my bibs and cycle in those. A pair of shorts, which I sleep in at night so that I'm not wearing my chamois shorts 24/7. A good New Zealand merino long sleeve shirt, which is again part of the sleep kit. It's my normal sleep kit for most temperatures, to wear that merino shirt and the shorts. And then a short sleeve shirt, which again, so I'm not wearing my one cycling shirt all the time. People don't have to sit next to me smelling like who knows what. And then finally, some underwear and some socks.
This is what's the sleeping bag?
This is it's a Nordisk 900 sleeping bag.
Yeah.
So it's actually the highest weight to heat you can get.
Yeah, and
It's in a mummy bag.
Yeah, and how much down's in it? Not much. Yep.
No, it's good down to probably about 5 degrees.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, and so combined with the rest of the down, it would be down below zero. And I also want to say, though, as you know, from experience, the less I have to sleep out, the better, because you recover best in a hotel.
Yep.
And so I figure I estimate if I can do it 135 days of cycling, probably maybe 20% will be sleeping out.
Yeah.
But this is more so, for example, right now in Kazakhstan, I expect temperatures as low as 5 degrees when I'm starting the ride. And they get sometimes 50-kilometer-hour headwinds.
Yeah. So
I may just have to stop by the side of the road and bivvy for a period of time. Yeah. So you want to have enough to do that.
And just while we're on sleeping, because I'm kind of like, I'm interested in that crossover, clothing to sleep kit.
Yeah.
Because they do this.
Yes.
They need to do that.
Yeah.
And your strategy around stopping, hugely influences that intersection of, how much clothing are you sleeping in, and how good does your sleep kit need to be? So just the other parts of your sleep kit, What are they?
The rest of the sleep kit consists of, this is a Z-Pax Hexamid tent, and then this is an insulated Nemo sleeping mat, and then this is what you recommended to me, the Montbell bivvy bag. And so once again, it gives me the number of layers to heat up. And so I learned last year I was using a Sea to Summit sleep mat, but I got really cold coming through. I was sleeping on benches.
Yeah.
And so I've gone for the Nemo as a slightly more insulated one, so a little bit bigger. The way I think it would work, just for argument's sake, is that if you can find a bus stop, you basically just have your bivvy bag and your sleeping bag. Yeah. If you have to do some serious stealth camping because you're remote and the weather's quite bad, I have a tent, and that'll give me much more safety and security.
Your trouble is you're traversing this huge range of situations, And the question you've got to ask yourself is, do I have something, is my plan to deal with every situation I confront and I have the right kit for that situation? Or do I try only and have the right kit for the 80% of situations I'm going to confront, and the other 20%, I just have to wing it and make it up? Mm. Okay, so that's the risk-reward scenario. And so that's what when I look at this, you've got the minimal kit you need to cover everything. that's the question. I could say to you, if you think you're always going to get a hotel, or you're going to go to if the weather's bad, you're going to go to a hotel. Why have you got a tent? Yes, the bivy bag I get, but the tent might be too much.
Yeah.
Okay. But in some parts of the world, the tent makes complete sense. Like, I think it's fine, and it's such a personal choice. I would probably be going, okay, a tent sounds essential to me. There's so much value in being able to put a tent up and get inside and have your own space to sort your stuff out, in an evening or at night. Like, there's so much value in that compared to trying to live out of a bivy bag. Like, that's huge. I'm a real fan of tents from that point of view. So if you're going to be sleeping on a bus shelter, you probably don't need a bivy bag because theoretically you're undercover, and you've got the rest of your setup's actually quite good, from that. The range of conditions, there's a few things I wouldn't take, but that's personal because I wouldn't take down booties because I don't get cold feet.
Okay.
So, but we're getting down to the detail there. The thing I go back to is it dawned on me when I did the Colorado trail race. To be vaguely successful at that, you had to take some risk with your gear, because you just cannot take the things that you really want to take to cover all the options that you think you're going to run into. You're just going to have to go, this might not work. If this happens, I can't cover that situation. What am I not going to cover? And that's the consequence of kind of the route, almost, because you can't take enough stuff to cover everything. And you just have like hell that, and so it might cost you time, or it might cost you the whole thing. And one of my big things when I talk to people about this stuff is saying, are you setting up, and is your mentality to finish at all costs? Is all your mentality to finish at a pace, and you're willing to take some risks to assess to reach that pace? Okay, so that's the key. Like, to me, that's always the first question you ask someone when you're going into an event, because that determines everything that follows from there.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're saying, hey, I want to ride around the world, and if it takes me 140 days, great. But if it takes me 160 days or 170 days, that's okay. So that's the question you need to ask yourself at the beginning of the, because if I'm a bit heavier, if I'm that 1 kilogram more than I would like to be, to me, that's the key question.
Yeah, and that's why I want to have this chat, because to me it's getting that balance in the sense that, technically, according to Guinness, it doesn't matter how fast I go because I'll be the oldest if no one beats me. But we all know that I actually want to do this respectably and get that right balance, because otherwise I'd tour with a stove and do all that stuff. But to me, we're trying to do this a bike packing race for, admittedly, 135, 140 days, if possible. All depends upon the body and the weather. Yeah. And that means going slightly more minimalist, but not too minimalist, because there's no bike shop for 2,000 kilometers. Yeah. And if you do find a bike shop, they're not going to have the right 12-speed Di2 type kit. And so it's ensuring that you don't cut it back to the point where you're affecting your viability of continuing without huge delays.
Well, and the other thing is it doesn't impact on your mental approach because you feel like you're taking a lot of risks. Like, carrying more gear gives you a degree of security that gives you more comfort and the ability to keep pushing. So that's the other payoff. It's like, you can ride into bad weather if you know you've got a tent, because you're like, well, if it gets too bad, I'll put my tent up.
True.
Where if you haven't got a tent, you go, I'm not sure I want to do this. I'm going to stop now and have to wait for this to pass. Yeah. Those are the trade-offs that you've got to make, and that I don't think anyone else can make those for you.
So I've got a 3-liter hydration pack, and I've got a second 3-liter storage, and I have 2 1-liter bottles, and then 3 smaller, these little tiny lightweight full bottles. So in total, I've got 9.5 liters of water capacity. And that's normally I do 4 to 5 liters a day in these races. But the reason I have this is I use an example in Kazakhstan. Is if I get stuck with a 50-kilometer headwind, that means it's not 250K a day, it's 150K a day of grinding. What I've done for the water purification is I've got some tablets, but also one of these Catadine Be-Free bottles, which are great because you just put them in and you can just squeeze them into your bag. Yeah. And the question is, am I being ridiculous taking aqua tabs as well as that? Well, my thinking there is, if I lose that or the bottle breaks and these don't weigh anything, it's just worth having those.
Like, I use both. I
Right.
may use them in completely different situations. So I'll use, like in overseas, I'll use a Catadin where I've got tap water and I don't trust the municipal water source. Like, there's plenty of places like Kyrgyzstan. I always filter the water, no matter, apart from Bishkek, everywhere I filter the water, every town. But then you get to some river and you're like, oh, well, there's some cattle up there, but the water's kind of clean, but there's cattle up there. Well, then I'll tab it as well as filter it.
Right.
I'll filter it and then I'll tab it.
So I'm not being obsessive compulsive
No.
doing both.
And like, I did the same in New Zealand, in the GSB one place. I was running low on water and I found some water that was in a farming area and it was a bit dodgy. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to drink this. So I filtered it and tabbed it and carried an extra litre. In the end, I didn't need it and I dumped it.
Right.
But it was there as my backup.
Right.
So tabs, I think for sure take them. That's simple. Empty water bottles weigh nothing.
Yes, that's my opinion too.
When you need it, you need it. The only thing I'd say is water bottles of some description are quite easy to come by, and if you've got a way of carrying a Coke bottle or a fizzy drink bottle of some description, because you can buy that stuff. You can buy that sort of stuff everywhere.
Yeah. Then
you may not need to, so that's the other thing, is having a way of carrying. And so that's where I see you've got one, a packable day pack is a good thing.
Yeah, so I actually have two of these things, and this is, again, am I going overboard? For my cycling vest, I'm using one of these raid lights.
Yeah.
And they actually have 18-liter capacity, and so there's a big pocket back here for putting them into. As much I had one of the Apodura ones, was just too small for me, and so this can also hold two of these water bottles in the back and another one up front, and so plus with this inside, so you can carry, I think, 4.5 liters just in your pack if you wanted to. This day bag actually is for when I go shopping. As you know, you run in to do a grocery run, and then once it's full, it can go here on my on the outside of my seat back, so I can just, when I don't eat and consume or stick in pockets, it can still stay outside there.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say in that is, given the system you're running, you may want to think about taking less capacity and just
winging it.
Well, just going, oh man, I've got a big section coming up. I'm going to put 3 litres of bottles on the back of my pack and carrying them, and I'll drink those first.
Yeah.
So, because that's what I do. I'm like, oh, I need extra water here. I did it in Kyrgyzstan. I had 2 litres capacity, and when I needed more, I just bought a bottle of Vera's iced tea.
Right.
And drank it, and when I got to the next town, if I didn't need that capacity, I ditched it. I did it again. Because everywhere in the world sells those sorts of drinks now in those sorts of bottles, and if you've got a way of carrying them, then that's a pretty easy way to get around it.
With this, again, it's trying to find that right balance of what do I need versus what can I wing it with, use that term. So, for example, I'm running tubeless, of course, and so I've got spare plugs for my diner tool. I've also taken 3 Tubolito tubes because I've got to do a lot of riding along motorway shoulders in places, and there's a lot of rubbish that gets cast over there, so I'm not so optimistic that I won't get punctures. But then I also know that these will eventually not work, so I've got a butyl repair kit for when I'll have to swap them out at some point, probably in China, for butyl tubes. In terms of the tools, I've got the standard, chain tool, this torque wrench. What's nice is this is a granite. I've seen these ones before. This is the granite ratchet, but it's also a torque wrench as well. So with the carbon bike, you don't want to over torque your things. Highly recommended. And then I've gone through the bike and identified every size bolt which I have on the bike, and I've replaced them as standard as much as possible. And for one of them, I have to use a longer one. So again, this is I've tried to get those down to the minimum. A small amount of Loctite, a few spare bolts, 2 derailleur hangers. Why? Because I broke one in France last year, replaced it, and then I bent the second one as well. And these, I couldn't even get them using my shop here very easily. As I mentioned, I've got 2 Di2 charger cables, cable ties, some lube, Electric pump, again, I'm getting lazy my old age, but what's nice about this is it's got a pressure gauge in it. And I know I've got around 50 on the rear and 48 in the front. That's the pressure sizes. It weighs only 25 more grams than my pump does, so I'm using that. BOA, as you know, they occasionally break and you need those. Spare pads, spare cleats. This is a bearing kit for my rear hub because it's a DT Swiss 180, and I know that if there's a problem, I will not be able to get that serviced. Front wheel, I can throw it away, swap it out, but the back one would be much more difficult for me to get. I'm taking a set of bottom brackets and my bottom bracket tool. I think I told you about this, that I created it by putting a hole through, and I can just put through a through axle, and that gives me the leverage to open and close it. I've got two Garmin's because I'm going to run them both at the same time, because once again I've had them fail almost every race. My Garmin blows up on me at some point. This is a rear radar unit, which I love using because it warns me when a vehicle is 150 meters. I'll probably take a second one too, just as a backup. I've got these two spot GPSs because this spot, which also has a personal locator beacon, is actually illegal in China and Uzbekistan because it has messaging capabilities and they don't allow it. So I'm going to be running this spot trace, which doesn't have those facilities for the first part of the race. And then this will be waiting for me in Darwin, in my Darwin box, so I can use it for the rest of the ride.
Spots aren't working in the region in Central Asia at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Because of the Ukrainian war and the spot satellite in that area, because our fixed position satellites has been disabled by the Russians.
Oh, wow.
So
need something else.
2 years ago, the Silk Road race changed over to inReaches for that reason.
But inReaches are also banned in China and Uzbekistan.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the spot satellite is disabled in over Central Asia at the moment.
Wow. Okay, that's a bit of information to go.
But you've got that covered, so that's cool.
Well, I don't, because these are both spot. So I'll have.
Oh, right.
Yes, this is the spot trace.
You might want to contact Nelson or someone who knows more about it than me.
Yeah, I did contact Nelson, and he said he wasn't sure about China.
China would be all right, I think. But I think the Central Asia portion.
Okay. Good to know.
From Ukraine, west to definitely as far as Kyrgyzstan, which is about as far east as that section is.
So this is all kind of like part of the adventure here, because I found out the other day that the border crossing I want to cross into from Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan is closed until 30th of April.
Right.
And the second one is going to go from Uzbekistan to back into Kazakhstan is closed until June. And so this is where you have these little challenges with your planning. All right, we'll deal with that. Yeah, so I use rechargeable batteries for my spots or whatever I end up using for this race now.
Yep.
I've got two phones because I broke a phone recently, and since I need to use those for backup navigation, booking hotels and everything, I'll have a second one just lying around. Two light night core batteries because they're only 10,000 milliamps each. They last a long time, but rather than have one big one. One of the things I've done is I've standardized on USB-C, so I've got a couple of legacy ones. So this will charge my watch, for example, and this will charge my older Garmin. So I just use adapters rather than take more cables. I have this as a headlight, which I can put on top of my helmet at night. This is a little one I leave in my pocket of my vest, because if you're fiddling around, you don't want to do that. This is a tiny micro player because I got many hours of riding the deserts, so I don't want to keep my things going. These are noise-reducing headphones because I have a brain injury, and I find I get panic attacks when I'm in airports and places with lots of noise, and so I just put those on. And these are some headphones just for riding with. So that's basically the toolkit, and I think I've really tried to balance it out and say what will be hard to get, like bottom brackets and even brake pads for my specific model of bike, versus what will I likely need. And virtually everything here at some point I've had to use.
Yeah, it's like looks completely fine to me. Tubolitos, love-hate relationship. So I always have a butyl tube with me. But, as long as you pump them up and you know they're good before you leave, I think if you've gone through that process and you know that they work. I think the more issue with those when you leave them in your bag for 6 months and you pull them out.
Yes.
And then then the valve's gone or there's a
Yeah.
split in them or something. So.
But I'm not such an optimist. I'm not taking butyl repair kit because
Yeah.
I know that they're not going to survive.
Yeah.
Part of my strategy is that people think I'm very Asperger's, which probably I am, but I've identified bike shops every 2,500 kilometers along the route.
Yeah.
And so at 2,500 K, I will just replace the chain.
Yeah.
At 5,000 K, I'll replace the chain, the cassette, and the brake pads, and the tires.
Yeah.
At 10,000 K, well, it's actually 12,000, which would be at Burke Cycles in Wellington. I'll also replace the rotors. And so I have a maintenance strategy, basically 2,500 K for a chain, 5,000 K for a pair of tires and brake pads, and try and do preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
But I tell you, it's really hard to get a bike shop in Turpan, China to respond to you. Can you supply 35 mil Continental all-season tires? But fortunately, through a friend of a friend, I've got someone in Shanghai helping me out.
Yeah. Oh.
And quite nicely is Mark Beaumont, who the current record holder. He connected me with a guy in Kazakhstan, in Almaty. So he's helping with Almaty bike shop. Yeah. So the bikepacking community, as we all know, is really very supportive.
Yeah.
This is my, we call it personal health hygiene kit. I'm asthmatic, and I also have extreme allergy reactions to bee stings. So I have to carry 2 EpiPens, and inside this inhaler, which is a spacer tube for asthma, I've got 5 doses of ephedrine and needles, which will hopefully not be needed, but hopefully it'll survive as well. So I have to carry that just for safety, and these are my inhalers. This is actually a steroid inhaler, which I'll use prophylactically every day, and these are really for emergencies when I have a bad reaction. And while on that, I don't know if you've ever seen these ones. This is a Respro mask, which is fantastic for cycling through deserts and dusty areas because it's got a good filter inside. And you can actually ride your bike without really feeling it's on there. And so again, I got this because I've used them on the Tour Divide and other places, and it's great for saving your breathing. I have, of course, a mask for flying just to keep myself slightly safe. This is actually an N95 mask from an American manufacturer called Happy Masks. And it's actually comfortable to wear and wear for a long time. You can clean the filter. Sleeping mask and sleeping pills. I don't know about you, but I find that at the end of the day, I'm often so ramped up with adrenaline that I can't sleep even though I'm physically tired. So I'll knock myself half a sleeping pill. These actually are towels, which weigh nothing, and you add water, and it goes up to a towel about that big. And so you can use those for washing, and then they will become my chain cloths after I've used them. And they're also biodegradable, so I won't feel bad about chucking them out. Sea to Summit have micro packets of laundry wash and pocket hand wash. This is because you often want to clean your shorts at the end of the day at the hotel that you get to when you can. Other stuff is, again, this is an unusual one. This is a pill container with cotton wool inside and filled with olive oil. And the reason is that I found from cycling through the deserts that my mucous membranes get really dried out inside the nose. And so by putting that on my finger and keeping the olive oil in my nose, it just makes the experience much better. Your lips get trashed, and so I have both a SPF 50 protection and repair. These are earplugs to try and sleep. A toothbrush with toothpaste, obviously a spork. This is the ASOS skin repair gel. So at the end of each day, I'll wash my nether regions, and I'll put that on to help the skin heal with skin. Sometimes you get some friction, so I take a small amount of chamois cream. And lastly, Kinesis, best suntan lotion I've ever found for cycling from Canada.
When I did the Silk Road race last year, when I got to it, I'd been there for a while, and I realised that I was nearly out of sun cream. And so I went to a chemist to buy some sun cream, and I bought what I thought was the best sunscreen. Anyway, on the first day I was riding, and I put it on. I put the new stuff on, and I was riding. It was down low and super hot. And late in the day, I thought I was getting burned, so I was like, "Oh, I'll put some of my own sunscreen on my arms." And I got to the end of the day, and I realised that the sunscreen I bought was useless because I had this big mark. I could see the line from where I put my New Zealand sunscreen on versus stuff I bought locally. So then I only had 2 days, 3 days worth of sunscreen left, and I was like, "Oh, screw here." And I knew I could buy any anything that's going to be good. But 2 days later, I found a tube sunscreen that someone else had dropped on the road, and it was awesome. I was like saved.
POC, aka SPF 50 shirt. The other manufacturers I contacted said they didn't know, or maybe SPF 15. So you got to be really careful when you do that. I think you've had a similar experience, Brian, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had a similar experience. I've got a really old Hurlazumi top that I used on the Tour Divide in 2016, which is long sleeve. It's an awesome top, and I still use it now, and I just use it on the Great Southern Brevet because it's fantastic in the heat, and it's long sleeve, and yeah, whereas some others I've got burned through for sure, so you do have to be careful. You haven't got arm warmers or leg warmers, I noticed, and I'm not saying you should have, but that's interesting because just about everybody else probably would have those things. You've got a long sleeve shirt, so that kind of counteracts that, and you've got a long sleeve wind vest,
Short sleeve wind vest.
and a lightweight rain jacket.
Yes.
Not really rainproof.
Well, no, it is actually. So this is a Pactimo rain jacket.
Without a hood.
Without a hood, but I have a hood with my rain jacket. It
Yeah.
has a hood, and it's actually not super lightweight. It is waterproof.
Right. To an extent that.
To a light rainstorm, you don't feel it. Heavy rainstorm, I chuck on my Gore-Tex.
Yeah, because it will just go straight through the zip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying so for the light rainstorms, this is what you can use.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about arm warmers and leg warmers, yeah, the rationale is that
Like leg warmers, you got the pants.
correct, and so I have the pants, and so
And they do more than they cover for going to the bar or all sorts of things.
they cover for flying on the airplane, etc. And so it's sort of saying leg warmers of themselves would not be would have a single function, whereas having a long pair of trousers which you can put on over your shorts achieves that. And for the arm warmers, once again, if I'm getting that cold, I'll chuck my long sleeve jacket on.
Overmitts are a windbreaker, really, eh?
Well, they are waterproof, but not really. It's like all the waterproofs. They're Raid Light, and so they're waterproof. But it is just to add, because I have regular cycling gloves and I've got some warm gloves.
Yeah, well, so I've got similar,
Yeah.
but the ones I have, which are Montane, are actually waterproof.
Ah, okay.
And they're about the same.
Right.
I think they weigh 38 grams or something stupid.
Yeah.
And they're great, especially if you can get them up under your jacket.
Sleeve.
Yeah, they work really, really well.
The Montane ones. I'll look those up. Thank you.
They're fantastic. I've had them again. I've got them for the Tour Divide, and now I just use them with that, and with a light pair of fleece gloves underneath them. They cover not everything, but they cover a huge range. And what I find is in the mornings when it's really cold, I just put those on.
Yeah.
And over my standard cycling gloves, and just get the wind off your hands.
Do you have short finger or long finger gloves that you ride with?
On a road bike, I tend to ride with most bikepacking, I tend to ride with short finger gloves because it allows me to do more. I can leave them on all day, and so when I'm handling screens and lots of fine stuff, I don't have to take them off.
Right.
So that's why I do that. So like I would normally take, for these sorts of scenarios, I've got short finger gloves and then something warm and then something to go over it. The main things that stand out for me are like the double ups, because that's what you're really looking for, eh?
Yeah.
The double ups that I would look at would be, taking personal preference out, is Bivy Bags tent is an obvious double up for me. And the other double up is around down pants. Because down pants seems to be a bit of a double up to me. Like I question that. I know they don't weigh much, but I would be tempted to go for something that's more versatile. Like a pair of full length, what I call long johns or something that I can wear if it's super cold and I want to ride, I can ride. Or I can wear it in more than once, because those pretty much are only good for standing around and at the end of the day or in the morning when you're getting out or sleeping in.
True.
They're not much good for anything else. They've got a really narrow range of use.
But they're really good when you're using them for that.
Yeah. But,
I know. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. I can't ride in them. That's a good point.
And you can, if it's super cold and you're in the morning, you probably would. but you've got something else that covers
Yes.
that quite well.
Yeah.
And so I kind of would go for something that I'd have a look at something else. And the other thing is down, that's useless if it's really wet.
So no glaring omissions.
Nothing obvious, you know. I probably wouldn't have 2 waterproof coats. I'd have 1 waterproof coat I trusted, and then I'd have a more of a windbreaker. So, you know, for me, those 3 garments, the vest, the waterproof jacket, kind of waterproof fabric, but not a waterproof jacket, and then the waterproof jacket, they would be 2 garments.
Right.
I'd kind of get that to 2, and make a choice and go, yeah. So I understand what you're doing, because there's a lot of situations, like it's hard coming from New Zealand when it rains, it actually rains. And you actually need something that works properly, whereas a lot of other parts of the world, it doesn't really rain that much or that long, and you just need something to ward off the worst of it.
But you also want to be visible as well, because that to me is the bigger issue with riding in the rain, is you just can't see people.
Yeah, because too many things are dark, eh? Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, I should say that the worst section of the ride is going to be Wellington to Auckland, because I'll be doing that at the end of June. It'll be cold and raining. So in my Wellington box, which will be waiting for me at Burke Cycles, I've got some warm gloves and some winter pants and a whole small amount of kit to ride to Auckland.
So one of the big things for me would be, there may be some things in here that you can go, I need it for this section, and then I don't need it after that.
Yeah.
And I think the way you're setting up the part you're doing at the start is probably the most challenging section.
Times 10, yes.
Yes. And so, you know, the other way to look at this list is, okay, once I get to Shanghai, is it?
Yep.
What doesn't go any further?
Yeah, and it's interesting to say that, because if things go well, I'll be hitting Sweden in September. Yeah. And so a lot of this really cold stuff I will not need from the time I hit Edmonton. I'll need it in Alaska when I'm going up from Anchorage. So I'll do New Zealand, then I go to Anchorage and around down to Edmonton. Yeah. But once I'm from Edmonton basically to Halifax, I will not need any really warm weather gear. Yeah. So the plan is to send all of that ahead to the bike shop in Halifax. Yeah. So I'll then just pick it up there, and maybe I can send it on to the bike shop in Denmark as well, because I won't need it in Spain in August. No. And fortunately, I've got a bike shop in Denmark, all organized, a bike shop in Halifax, all organized, and Burke Cycles in Wellington organized. Yeah. And I've got a bike shop in Darwin organized if necessary, and also working on the one in Shanghai. So this is part of the planning that goes ahead. It's really interesting, because if you read the books of Jenny Graham and Andrew Nicholson, for example, who had the records before, they kind of winged it, the entire thing, and I'm quite the opposite. I'm trying to think of all the risk factors and how do I minimize those by knowing where the bike shops are, knowing where the places to stay are. Which is probably why I'm so over planning for this thing. I just want to get on and ride my bike, because I've planned so much. And I just want to get going.
Yeah.